hunting where a little drain, just a low spot comes out of that cut. And it doesn't have to be a big hill. It doesn't have to be like a valley running up in there, but literally just a low spot coming out. Even something that they just cut right across. There's no...
Those are the best ones.
Yeah, there's no SMZ or anything in there. They cut right across it, and it just dumps out into like a hardwood bottom or something. Those are awesome spots. Or even dumps out into like another pine stand. They like to walk those little low areas in there. I think it's one way that they find their way around in those thickets.
Yeah.
You know?
And also, it seems like those low spots, for some reason, there's always some kind of habitat change, like whether the ground's rocky or something. The pine trees don't grow that great. They try to plant that drainage.
Yeah.
And it always seems like they're more brushy. Like those low spots are more brushy than the hillsides next to it. And that's, I think it's another like interior habitat edge, which again, they'll bed on, they'll travel up and down it and so on. And we've watched that so many times.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. This Thanksgiving edition of the Q&A Southern Outdoorsman Podcast. Gonna have fun. Jacob looks like a pumpkin sitting over there.
Listen, celebrating Thanksgiving, pumpkins, also gun season is now open. So, rocking my Blaze Orange.
Yeah, once again, the great thing about living in Alabama is we're just getting started here, man. A lot of the country is kind of tuning out, late rut. Going into late season, there's a lot of folks still hunting, but it's just getting good in the deep south. So I'm excited. Some of our best spots are just now starting to kick off. Got a cold front hitting Thanksgiving weekend. Me and my buddy Colton growing up, it was always double buck Black Friday because we kill some bucks on Black Friday, boy.
Yep.
It's going to be good. So we're heading right into that. But I think on this episode, we're just going to do a bunch of Q&As the whole way through. So we're going to knock out a whole bunch of these because we got a back catalog. So you got anything before we kick them off?
Just thankful for you guys. Thanks for watching the podcast and appreciate y'all listening to it and leaving comments and everything. It's been a crazy year for us, so glad y'all have enjoyed the show. Hopefully you enjoy this episode and a lot more to come from the Southern Outdoorsman, but let's kick it off.
All right, first up we got Daniel Whiting. I think you wrote in a question before, and I think I said the same exact thing about his last name. I'm pretty sure it's one of those two. He's from North Carolina. Subject is huntable scrapes.
Hey guys, so I have two quick questions. I'm still new to this trying to hunt over scrapes thing, but I found this scrape that it's probably the biggest one I've ever seen. It's not quite car hood size, but it's close, and it's got two piles of, it doesn't look as big on camera, but it's got two piles of pretty fresh droppings in it. They're kind of starting to get right there, and then there's more over here, and they're relatively fresh, and then I also have licking branches that are like broken off next to it from above. This is under a holly. So my question, I know there's a big debate between night sign and then also scrapes that are worth hunting during the day. Is this the type of scrape that you would consider worth hunting as like our buck's going to make daytime appearances on it? And then second of all, actually on my way in here, I kind of had this scrape already found and I wanted to check it out. But on my way in here, I walked past a fresh gut pile from this morning that had a pair of testicles in it. So my question is, in the future, if I come across that type of scenario, is it still worth hunting that day in that same area? I say in the future because I know that this won't get answered the day I'm recording it. So in the future, is it still worth hunting then? And then also, is this the type of the scrape you would recommend actually hunting on during the day?
All right, Daniel, appreciate the question, man. So on the scrape question, we'll take the gut pile question first. I say yes, I would still hunt it. I don't think it bothers deer as much as people think it does.
Depends on one thing. I would say this. If it's a funnel, like a really good funnel, and it's the rut, it would not bother me. If it was like in a feeding area, that's a very isolated feeding area, that there's no real funnel close to or right up in the bedding, I would not be in that general area because likelihood it might just be like the 1 or 2 bucks that was in the area that got killed one of them. But
Okay, that's a good caveat.
If it's a rut funnel, sure, dude, and it's the rut, absolutely keep hunting it. I mean, it doesn't bother me all that much. So again, rut funnel, absolutely would hunt it. If it's inside like a tight little bedding area, a little tiny food source, I would be a little more leery of it. So that would be my caveat with the gut pile. That actually happened at Thomas when we were up in Arkansas. They literally hunted a spot, him and his buddy, Gage hunted a spot. I hunted 300 yards from him. When I worked my way up to him, there was a gut pile, big old testicles in it. I'm talking about that, dude. I would love to see what that buck looked like. Okay? And it was laying, it was fresh, probably the day before, laying 40 yards from him. They never saw it when they climbed up right there. And it's a really good spot. Thomas has some history in that spot. And it's not necessarily a funnel. Like it's more just like a big flow area. Like the deer, if it's a funnel, it funnels deer within 200 yards between 2 fields, and they just kind of drift through. So there's no tight funnel right there. But I have seen that. The flip side on the scrape. To me, what makes a scrape super huntable, at least in the deep south, it has to be really, really close to really good bedding, especially if it's something that's going to have a lot of daylight activity. I think all the best scrapes we've ever found, for the most part, are close to bedding with an adjacent travel corridor that pinches down into it. So you have like doe bedding next to it or just adjacent to it off either side, and there's a there's a edge habitat or something right there that the deer are working down, and they're hitting that scrape going between bedding areas. Those can be really good, but if it's in a wide open woods, he didn't really show the woods all that much. It didn't look like in the videos. The wide open woods, and there's no good bedding anywhere close by. Yeah, you could catch a buck on there during a scrape, on that scrape during daylight hours, but maybe for a very tiny little short period of time. So by the time you get notification, if it's a cell camera, he may be come and gone on that specific scrape. May still work through there, but the best ones I think we've ever found are the ones really tight to bedding cover where they're just coming in and out of it. And you also can have the opportunity to have bucks on it multiple times, either in the day or in a day, or coming through in a very quick path within a 3-4 day window of time when they're on that scrape.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. It has less to do with what the scrape looks like on the ground and more to do with what the scrape is adjacent to. So like just thinking of a couple off the top of my head, some that I'm actually getting ready to hunt here now that our rut's coming in. The best ones are situated right next to exactly what you said, right next to bedding with some kind of travel corridor that pinches into that bedding. I've got other scrapes that get a lot of bucks on them, and this is a perfect time for this question because I just went through all of last year's trail camera data for this area I'm about to start hunting and looked at what the deer were doing on these scrapes. And there's certain scrapes that are out in the feeding areas that I got a bunch of really nice bucks on, including some daylight pictures, but the occurrences of big bucks there in daylight was very random. It was very sporadic. It was like once every 2 or 3 weeks. Whereas there's these other scrapes that are up closer to the bedding areas. They might be smaller scrapes, actually, but they would get, at least once a week, a mature buck on camera in daylight. So that's what I mean when I say it's about the proximity of where it's at. And I run cameras on a bunch of different kinds of scrapes, and Steve Shark talked about the same thing up in Pennsylvania, hunting the big woods up there. It holds true in the deep south too. It's mostly where the scrape is located. So like that spot where we had a bunch of bucks on camera I was showing you and Thomas the other day, like that scrape is a perfect example. It's in a feeding area. It's a decent sized scrape. It's nothing crazy, but it gets used quite a bit. Bunch of mature bucks on it, and about 65 to 70% of the bucks that come by it are at night. And then there's a scrape closer to the bedding that's pretty much exactly the opposite. Most of the time they're there in the daytime. Mm-hmm. So that's what I would do with that. And then, yeah, gut pile thing.
Also, one thing, we might have talked about some podcasts. I mean, we've done a lot of episodes over the years. But I wonder if scrapes in areas that have really common occurrences of swirling winds get more daylight activity than others. And the reason I say that, I just found a scrape a couple days, or probably less than a week ago. Me and Thomas were out hunting some public, and on the way out, I found one scrape that was in that feeding area, giant scrape. You could smell it from 60 yards away. We ain't talked about that, but you could smell this scrape. And I thought there was a buck bed down next to this brush top. Ended up being a big scrape. But on the way out, I hit a drainage walking back up towards the road. Ended up getting a bunch of nasty blowdowns. It was terrible having to navigate through all that stuff. But when I popped out, of this blowdowns is still in the drainage. It was a thermal hub, had 3 drainages coming together, coming out of this pine thicket. And there is a huge, beautiful scrape that had been freshly worked right there. Had white oaks all around it. It was a tight little bottom, but you could look at it, just how steep the ridges were around it. It's going to swirl really bad, the wind is. You might be able to get up high on one of these ridge points right next to the edge of the pine thicket and hunt it maybe, but I don't have a camera on it yet. Thomas is going to put a camera on it. We're going to put a camera on it. But I wonder if something like that's like, it's tight in around bedding. There's bedding almost 360 degrees around it. It's a travel corridor where they're dropping across this thermal hub, but the wind swirls real bad in there. If that's a spot that maybe a deer would use even more so than even a big scraper on the edge of a bedding area. Yeah, they would have a little more consistent wind direction.
Now I hope y'all put a camera on it. I'd like to see.
Yeah, actually. And I say the swirling wind because the deer can get down in there. He can smell it from a bunch of different directions, no matter the wind condition. But also, if he's down in that little opening where the scrape is, something tries to drop in there, he's going to smell anything around him. So that's kind of the thought process on that swirling wind.
Yeah. All right. Next up, we got Ryan Hayes from South Carolina. Subject is avoiding deer trails.
What's up, you guys? Got a interesting question for you here today. I hear a lot of your guests and even you guys talk about not crossing deer trails or not walking deer trails. And on public, at least where I'm at in South Carolina, man, it's so thick. If they're in a deer trail, they're in a trail at all to get to some of these spots. So my question is, am I going too far? I mean, I'm seeing deer in these areas that I'm going into, but I may be messing myself up on entry. And then 2, I got a piece of private land, and I actually cut an auxiliary trail into where I set up my saddle. And it kind of skirts around the funnel, and it's covered in rubs right now. I mean, just tons of buck sign on that trail. And that's my access. So I don't really know how to not use the same trails the deer are using, I guess. And I struggle with that because I feel like I'm doing something wrong here. What are your thoughts?
All right, Ryan, excellent question. Dude, sometimes I used to hunt a spot like this, actually close to where you and Thomas are hunting, where to get in there, you had to walk through a pine thicket. I mean, you just had to. And I called it like my sacrificial deer trail that I was just going to walk in on. And there'd be scrapes on it and everything, but I still saw deer there. I mean, if you're seeing deer, I think it's fine. I mean, if there's that many trails in the area, there could be a lot of deer, but if there's that many trails in the area, they got a lot of choices. So, I mean, you got to do what you got to do. And we have a future guest coming up talking about rerouting deer trails, which is pretty interesting. And he talks about kind of making your own trail to get them to walk closer to your tree. So it's not especially after talking to him, it's not surprising that the trail you cut is covered with rubs now. Mm-hmm. So, sometimes it'd be that way.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about it that much. I mean, I think that's a commonality with a lot of us in the deep south, especially if you're hunting just timbered ground, not open ag fields or just open ground, is especially in these, when you start getting around ponds and really thick cover, there are very specific trails. And like you had mentioned, if you're going through that cover, like if you got to get to the other side to hunt maybe like a bigger transition or something, more than likely, wherever you're walking is a deer trail because it is the slightly more open spot than what's adjacent to you. So you're just going to have to do that. It's one of those things at this point, I don't even worry about it because I'm like, for this one trail, there's 10 other ones probably within 100 yards of me that are probably leading into that general location if it's a really good spot. So I'm not super, super worried about it. But if you start getting in an area, I think with lower deer numbers, that's maybe probably when you have a little bit bigger issue. Yeah. There's not as many trails and you're just tracking one of those up. It's like that could potentially hurt you. But dude, if you get in a good spot and there's deer coming from a bunch of different directions, you're going to have to walk on a trail. So it's just something you got to do.
Yeah. The only time I really worry a lot about walking in on trails is when you're maybe going to hunt some kind of funnel or something. And I just try to not walk one of the main trails that's going to feed into that essentially. Because I don't want to cut off one of those potential routes of entry for the deer to get to where I'm going to.
Unless you're going old school with old drag rag.
The old drag.
A little no estrus on it, baby.
Have you ever had success with a drag rag?
I think we've talked about this before a while back.
I've never had it work. I haven't done it a ton, but I've done it.
We used to do it a ton as kids. Like my uncles, Man, it'd be cutting rags up and like tying them to like a little piece of paracord drag behind you, or just putting some doe urine on your boots. We did that a ton growing up. I don't think I've had that happen. But then again, I kind of want to get back into doing it, dude, because it was fun. Like, listen, especially if it's one of those spots you got to walk into, it's kind of invasive. Like, you got to walk through some stuff, especially on a morning hunt. Like, you're trying to get in real early. Like, you're kind of getting past some bedding area, getting the backside of bedding or whatever. Just the way your axis sets up for it. That's where I feel like it'd be super handy. I think I would rather use it on a morning hunt than an afternoon hunt for that reason. It's like getting in there, I'm going to have to walk by places that deer are going to be crossing. Maybe one of them bad boys will kind of fall in on me. And if they're coming downwind, they're coming downwind. But also, if I'm doing that, it's probably I got a gun in my hand.
Yep.
So, a little bit different.
Spray it right on the boots. You ever see that video of the dude getting whooped up on by that? Some young buck walked up and just beat him up.
There was a guy in my grandparents' church that got attacked by a buck by having buck urine on him.
Dude, that's why I don't want to get sexually assaulted by a deer. So I ain't spraying that stuff on me.
I mean,
sometimes you just got to do what it takes.
Best mouth spray, man.
That's terrible. All right, next up we got Mason Brook. Old Mason Brook, writing in from Georgia. Subject is young pine stands.
What's up, fellas? Mason from Georgia. All right, so backstory. Property was cut a couple years ago, burned 2 years ago, and replanted last year. How in the world am I going to hunt this place in 5 years when these pines are 10 or 12 foot tall? Anything from elevation really ain't going to be that great, I would assume. We'll be able to bush hog in between the blind pines like we have here, but, in a couple years, I'm sure that tree canopy's going to choke out the ground, and there's not going to be able to have all these grasses and stuff growing. My question to y'all is, basically, is there an episode or a guest that came on and talked about something similar? There's a SMC right there. So, obviously I could check up in a saddle or climber or whatever on those, one of them hardwoods in that SMC, but yeah, just thinking for the future. There's another SMC. Yeah, curious to hear y'all's thoughts. Thanks, man.
All right, Mason, appreciate that. Jacob's got a lot of comments about this.
Listen, Mason, if you want to know how you hunt that, first off, you got to limb that pine tree and get it about 35 feet up, 300 Win Mag or 7 Mag with a 3x15 scope, and you're good to roll. Hey, dude, listen, that looks awesome. It's kind of crazy they brush hogged in between the rows, and I've never seen a pine plantation planted in rows that wide.
Yeah.
I've never seen that. Most of the time they're too tight there. I mean, it's like a sea of green when they're 2 years old.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't get bush hogged and y'all let that grow up in some grass and forbs, it'll be phenomenal. But the thing about it, and talking gun hunting, I'm not talking bow hunting with this setup, you got to get high. I mean, I don't know how high he is in that tree, but I would find a couple trees for a couple different wind directions where you can, if you're allowed to limb some trees, some pine trees, take a couple limbs off where you can get to 35-ish feet or higher. Yes, you're going to have to adjust your climbing platform if you're using a climber. If you're one sticking, your money, saddle hunting. But if you can do that, you could have some phenomenal hunting, because really that's really not that great of cover. I mean, it's not great cover right now. I mean, it's just rows of little pines with nothing in between them because it's been mowed or sprayed, but it looked like it had been mowed. So, again, if that grows up a little bit, you can get a little higher elevation. That's going to be phenomenal. The only thing that, to me, in that circumstance, when it's going to age out, maybe when the pines get 7, 8, 10 foot tall, you're gonna still, if you get high enough up, you can see underneath them, you can see through them, especially in those big rows. But it's gonna be like sweet gum saplings coming up that choke it out. But again, I think you've got a couple of years before that really happens, unless they spray them.
Yeah, that was part of the question. It's kind of hard to hear because he's whispering, but part of the question was, in 5 or 6 years, when it gets big like that, how would you adjust to hunting that? And was it John Boy that we talked to about, he's hunted a couple timber cycles on the places that he's hunted, where, it went from clear cut to young pines to thin pines to mature pines to back to a clear cut. I mean, hunting a place for 20, 30 years and you see that full timber cycle. And was it him or was it Todd? That I can't remember. But it was one of those guys we talked to, addressed that specifically. And, right now, like Jacob was saying, that stand looks really good. Like I'd be hunting the fire out of that thing. But in a couple years, it kind of ages out from where it'll get hard to actually hunt and look into that thing, but it's still primed for bedding cover. So when you're talking about it hitting that 5-year mark, it's going to be tough to see into that thing.
I don't think it's going to be. If you're on the head of one of those roads, you won't be able to see 10 rows to the left or right.
I don't know, dude. Those pines are going to grow up and those limbs are going to grow into each other.
Hey, look, I don't know what the rule is on the club. Talk to Westervelt, whoever it is. You can go through and limb a couple of them bad boys. Have you a couple lanes. I don't know.
I'm sure the timber company would love that.
I've never seen a pine stand look like that. Like, for real. Like, that's like what it looks like if they're 35 foot tall and they've gone through and they've thinned them. You have rows like that, but I've never seen them planted like that wide of a row.
Yeah, I don't know. They just planted at our club, and I got to go back and look at it. But when I was looking at the spacing on our club, I was like, dang, those look kind of far apart. Like, they just planted. They burned it and then planted them like 2 weeks ago, and the pine trees are about that tall.
Are they long leaves?
No, they're loblollies.
Okay. Well,
unfortunately.
I mean, yeah, at some point they're going to touch and everything, but...
Well, I'm saying once it gets to that point where you can't really see into it anymore, that's when you transition to hunting around the edges of it, or if there's some kind of road bed that runs through there, hunting that road bed where you just have some kind of opening that cuts through it.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's going to be good for like 10 years, legitimately. Yeah. You know, probably half that time you're going to have where you can actually sit and look into it and hunt the cut. But then once it ages out, then you just got to move off to the edges, find where they're exiting it, find a straightaway. Like if there's a road that runs through the middle of that bad boy, hopefully there's a good straightaway on it where you can sit. Those road beds are good places to limb a couple trees too if you can. Like sometimes they'll have some limbs growing into them, and if you just go take out 2 or 3, all of a sudden it opens up an extra 75 yards that you can shoot. That's money, dude, with a gun.
That's on the club when the guys had a side. I mean, I think we talked about this on the work days, but anyways, he had a skid steer with a brush hog attachment that would angle at a 40 or 90 degrees, and he just run that sucker down the side of the road, and just everything up to about 10 foot off the ground, it was limbed quick. Super. I'm like, that thing is nice. You ain't pole sawing nothing, dude. I mean, he's just rolling through there. So anyway, but yeah, that looks awesome, Mason.
Not too shabby. All right, this one is from Billy Mango.
Oh, you're doing this one?
Yeah. I'm doing
I thought we were saving it.
All right, from Alabama.
Hey, what's up, guys? It's Thomas with Hunt Kitchen. Me and a couple buddies were having an interesting conversation about what animal would be the most terrifying in the woods if it was the size of a golden retriever or bigger than what it normally is. I said raccoon, but I want to hear your thoughts.
All right, Thomas Myers, Billy Mango. I'm going to start calling him that.
Hey, listen.
Billy Mango, what does that even mean?
I don't know. He came up with that on the fly.
Billy Mango. That's so funny.
Yeah, Billy Mango.
All right, what animal would be scary if it was the size of a golden retriever? Raccoon's pretty good.
No, I'll tell you what it is. A squirrel. There ain't no animal that's got more attitude than a squirrel. And you imagine a squirrel the size of a golden retriever? Dude, they're fighting up in the tree. Dude, they'd take you out, son, in a tree stand. Dude, that, I'm telling you. I mean, yeah, a raccoon would be pretty freaky, dude, if it was about 85, 90 pounds, okay? But I'm telling you, a squirrel that big, dude, jumping through the limb, they're jumping through the tree. Oh my God. Are you kidding me?
That would be...
That's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay, when you said that.
It's not on the ground. That sucker's through the tree.
Imagine the bark. That thing...
I mean, dude, forget a chimpanzee, dude. That sucker with those teeth, heck no. It's straight squirrel for me.
Dang. Yeah, man. Okay, squirrel's a good one. Raccoon's a good one.
I know.
Dude, possums. Possums are just kind of weird looking anyway.
They just play possum. I'm all good.
I don't know, man. They eat meat.
Yeah, I know, but no. It'd be raccoon or squirrel, but I know what Pablo would say. It'd be a pigeon.
It's all fun and games, so you got to fight a pigeon in the dark.
Wrestle a pigeon in the dark, yeah.
Oh, listen. Y'all got to go back. And
so for all the viewers and listeners out there, what would be what would be the craziest, scariest animal that if it was the size of a golden retriever?
I'll give you just an off-the-wall one.
What?
A woodcock. Not that it would mess you up or anything, but just imagine like that, those big eyes and that long beak and flushing one.
No.
Dude, a woodcock, that'd be weird. I mean, just looking at it would be freaky.
Yeah, but I'm thinking like something that would harm you. Like, actually, like, I'm not going to the woods because of that. Imagine how many acorns a squirrel would have to eat if it was 85 pounds.
Dude,
or 90 pounds.
There'd be a shortage for all our deer out there.
So there'd be a lot of broken limbs up in that tree too.
Yeah, I mean, like
it make a new term of limb hopping. I'm telling you, dude. You saw a freaking pack of them come to the trees, dude. You on some big oak flat? You got a bow? No, thank you, dude. Yeah. Heck no.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. I'm gonna have to go. I mean, squirrel. That's solid. That's solid.
Yeah. So y'all write in, drop a comment below, kind of what you think would be the most intimidating animal if it was that big. There's more of you guys getting into saddle hunting than ever before, and a common question we always get is how do you get comfortable in a saddle, because there's so many moving parts. And today I'm gonna give you 3 of the best tips that I have for getting comfortable in the saddle after doing this for about 8.5 years. Number 1 is tether height. Setting your tether at the right height is going to give you extreme comfort, but this is one big reason why you need to practice with it. I like mine right at nose level when I'm standing on the platform. The other is your bridge length. Having an adjustable bridge on your saddle makes it extremely comfortable to fine tune that comfort, and I like mine extended out almost all the way. The third is how you sit in your saddle. Some people like the saddle sitting just below the belt line, which I've done in some saddles in the past. That made it more comfortable. Some are right at the belt line, and some are a little bit above the belt line. Now, having a very comfortable saddle makes it really easy to do all this stuff with less adjustment. And the Lone Star saddle from Latitude Outdoors is that saddle for me personally. I really like the saddle, and I really like the hip pinch reduction system that's built into the saddle that gives me a lot more comfort all day long with less adjustments needed. If you want to check out the Lone Star saddle from Latitude Outdoors, you can go to latitudeoutdoors.com for more information.
One thing we talk about with almost every guest on this show is map scouting. My favorite map scouting tool is LiDAR. If you're unfamiliar, LiDAR is basically like a 3D scan of the Earth's surface. I like to say it kind of takes away all the surprises. LiDAR is now available on onX Hunt on their topography map. If you go to your app right now, click on the topography map, you can flip on that LiDAR feature and boom, it's gonna come on and you're gonna see what I'm talking about. The LiDAR is gonna allow you to see things that are normally hidden from view. This might be ditches, bends and creeks, rocks, old road beds. I personally love old road beds because deer like to walk them. They're great places to find scrapes. They're great camera locations. And you know, before, an old roadbed or an old logging road might be something that you kind of happen upon while you're out scouting or hunting. Well, now with the LiDAR, before I go into an area, I can turn on that LiDAR and I can see exactly where those roadbeds are. Even old logging roads from the 1930s, you can still see them on there. So that allows me to go straight to those spots and check them out. It's just an incredibly helpful tool, and it's available now on onX Hunt. And hey, if you want to get 20% off your onX Elite membership, you can use the promo code SOUTHERN. Like I said, it's going to save you 20%. Go check out that LiDAR feature. You'll be glad you did. Know where you stand with onX Hunt. Next up, we got Paul Elkan from Alabama. He said hunting pine clear cuts, our favorite subject.
Hey guys, big fan of the show. Got a question for you on hunting in deep south pine country. Think Monroe County, Alabama. Rolling pine plantation with SMZs, a lot of what you guys talk about hunting. A particular question on clear cut hunting. Haven't honed in on that yet. There's a lot of, just like any southern pine, you have clear cut here, older pine, you have different age classes. What age clear cut and roughly what height of the pine tree is in that age where you're going to look for food, them eating food? I'm thinking that's pretty short, pretty new clear cut. And then when are they going to bed in it? What does that look like? Obviously this varies, but want to try to hone in. I've already honed in on all the edge diversity, where all the different edges come together. That really helped me last year to get a buck from you guys, listen to the podcast, but want to hone in on specifically hunting clear cuts and looking for what's food and what's bedding. Thanks. Bye.
All right, Myers, what you got on that one?
So typically, unless they plant pines really fast after a clear cut, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. If it's around 2 years old, it's mostly food unless it is really cold. If it's really cold, not really windy, but specifically really cold, they can get out in that and get a lot of sunlight. Now, a lot of that cover will be like 3.5 feet tall or so. That's good, again, food, and then covering colder weather. To me, like when you start getting like the really good bedding, it's like that 3+ year mark. When those pine trees are kind of getting like chest high, head high, but they're still kind of sporadic out there. And you get a lot more of the grasses growing up in forbs, and you got briars starting to kind of come up in there. Tons of honeysuckle and everything. That's when, to me, it's fun to hunt, but it also starts to get a little challenging because you're mixing food with really good bedding. They don't have to leave it. So it's like, that's when, again, jacking up a tree as high as you can get, watching down into that, again, specifically gun hunting with my thought process here, watching a low spot. If you're up on a ridge top, depending on how the clear cut's set up, if you have an SMZ that kind of peters out into that clear cut and it's a low spot, it goes up through that ridge, that's a phenomenal place to catch a deer going back and forth over the top of it, bedding around it, traveling up and down it. Those low spots and clear cuts are something we talk about all the time. That's really, really effective. But yeah, when you get to like 3 years old, it's like prime bedding, most of the time, prime bedding and food, and they're just hunkered in there and they can hold a lot of deer.
Yeah. I guess a good rule of thumb for it would be, once those pine trees get about as tall as you are and taller, that's when it's really prime bedding. Like, that's when they really stack up in there. Because a lot of times when they're bedding in those cuts, they're bedding up under some kind of tree. Like, sometimes it's a pine, but usually, like around here, it says Baccharis hedges, those Mediterranean looking trees. They'll bed up under those hedges, or just any kind of bushes that are out in that thing amongst the pines. They'll bed up under something like that. So that's when it gets really, really prime for bedding. You start getting more like vines and honeysuckles and greenbriers and stuff in there, and that's when it gets, again, just that's when they're really laying in there. And then, like we said earlier, it kind of reaches a point where you really can't hunt it anymore, like jack up on the side and watch into it. And that's when it's still good bedding for a couple years even after that. And that's when you just got to transition to hunting on those edges and stuff. And if it's rolling hill country like what you're talking about down in South Alabama, I've had really good luck on places like that, hunting where a little drain, just a low spot comes out of that cut. And it doesn't have to be a big hill. It doesn't have to be like a valley running up in there, but literally just a low spot coming out. Even something that they just cut right across. There's no...
Those are the best ones.
Yeah, there's no SMZ or anything in there. They cut right across it, and it just dumps out into like a hardwood bottom or something. Those are awesome spots. Or even dumps out into like another pine stand. They like to walk those little low areas in there. I think it's one way that they find their way around in those thickets.
Yeah.
You know?
And also, it seems like those low spots, for some reason, there's always some kind of habitat change, like whether the ground's rocky or something. The pine trees don't grow that great. They try to plant that drainage.
Yeah.
And it always seems like they're more brushy. Like, those low spots are more brushy than the hillsides next to it. And I think it's another like interior habitat edge, which again, they'll bed on, they'll travel up and down it and so on. And we've watched that so many times. And it's like, if you can set up, not like have that low spot right in front of you, but you can set up adjacent to it, like a 45-degree angle where those deer can kind of come up and through it, or be bedded along, but you can shoot into it at a 45-degree angle. It's money.
Yeah,
money.
Good stuff. Yeah, one of my better camera spots on the club, I haven't really started, I've bow hunted it a couple times, but it's on a scrape. My camera is, and it's right on the edge of a longleaf stand that runs into a loblolly stand. So this longleaf stand, those trees are probably 15 feet tall, but it's longleaf and they burn it, so it's managed more like a savanna. So when you walk out into it, it's grassy underneath, and you could see probably 30, 40 yards in any direction, but there's bushes here and there. Well, there's a low spot that runs right through the middle of it that they cut right through, and those longleafs aren't growing real well down there, but all the briars and vines and hedges and all kinds of stuff are growing. And I walked in there in the summertime, and it was just covered with beds. And all the trails are just cutting right along the sides of that little low spot, and they're coming out of it. And right where it pops out into those longleafs, that's where that scrape is. And I've actually got to adjust my camera because they ripped down the licking branch on the first scrape, and they made another scrape 5 yards off the edge of it. And I keep getting their butts working that scrape, but I can't see what's on their head. So I got to adjust that. But those longleafs are an example of something that you can't really climb and hunt in those longleafs. Everything on the edges, I mean, I don't care how high you get in that tree. There's so many of those stems coming up, you just can't see into it real good. But that place in particular, there is a road bed that runs through it that you can hunt that I'd be surprised if I don't kill one there this year. And then that scrape on the other end of it where that little drainage comes out, it's a little closer quarters. It's kind of a bow spot, but you can rifle hunt it. That's another good area. So I've got two spots strategically where I could hunt that, where I feel like I could kill the deer that are bedding in around that, traveling around it, whatever the case may be. And also at that scrape too, you've got deer coming out of that low spot, but also a lot of those bucks are just walking the edge of it, and they're either just cutting right below that low spot, and I guess they're maybe catching the thermals falling out of that bedding area, or they're turning and they're going right up into it where that low spot's at. So there's deer crisscrossing it everywhere. I mean, it's full of deer, but there's certain spots where I feel like the bucks like to walk, and that's one of them. So hope that helps, man. Keep us updated on your season. This next question is from Jim Caskey from Michigan.
Hey, Southern Outdoorsman. Love your podcast. It's been enlightening for me to learn. First year hunter, officially grew up fishing and shooting Saturdays and Sundays, but now I have a property of my own here in Michigan. A couple ponds, a little bit of wetlands, a ridge, definitely a lot of woods and some open fields. Long story short, I've owned this property now, about 8 months, I guess. And a lot of deer, 30 plus heads on this, about $10, 3 that are worth taking. But I noticed that once I got really interested, and probably when I purchased my bow is when the deer started to change. But that's not my real question. My real question is, when I put my cameras out, it's when I really started to think, man, these deer know cameras, and or they can smell me on the cameras and their patterns change. Do you have any insight on and or experiences where you put a camera up and deer are like, yeah, I'm not going to go by there? Anyway, that's my question. Do you experience deer that are changing their patterns and habits due to the cameras that you put up? Anyway, much love. Can't wait for the next episode. Take care.
All right, appreciate it, Jim. Congrats on getting your own property, man. That's awesome. Yes, I have seen that on my cameras where deer will see the camera, they'll get wise to it. There's a big 8-point we were hunting a couple years ago. We're hunting him during the rut. I had him on camera a couple times, and my cameras are on scrapes, and like most of them are. And he was working the scrape one time, and he noticed my camera, and I mean, he like looked at it, and he like was doing this right here with his head, and then he walked up to it, and he like smelled the camera. I had him like right up on the camera, and then after that, didn't get him on camera for like 2 or 3 weeks, and he was pretty regular in there. And I was like, dang, he must have just left. Well, then during the rut one day, it's actually when you killed your buck in there, and me and Thomas were helping you pack it out. That camera sent me a video, and he was like, I mean, it's a couple 100 yards down the same ridge, and that buck chased a doe by that camera in the daylight. And I was like, well, crap, he's been in here the whole time. I think that when they notice your camera, I don't think that they're leaving your property or anything like that. I mean, it depends on how big your property is. I don't think that they're like moving, for instance, like leaving the area and finding a new place to live. I think they're probably just avoiding that camera. I mean, they might be walking on the back side of it. We've talked to so many guys over the years who have seen that, where they'll see a big buck going through. Or I'll tell you a perfect example of this. We interviewed Charlie Klossa last year, who hunts up in Minnesota, and he does a lot of snow tracking. So he finds a big mature buck track in the snow, and he'll track it miles and miles and miles through the big woods. And he's in that episode, he mentioned that a lot of times when he's tracking those big deer, they will avoid cameras. So like all the deer tracks are walking in front of these people's cameras that he's finding, and that mature buck track peels off and he walks like 40 yards behind the camera. Or he just peels off and he's just avoiding them. Like he knows that they're there. They could be smelling you. It could be that they see the camera. It could be that they hear the camera. Some cameras make noise. So all that to say that whatever you're getting on your cameras, I would just take with a grain of salt, because it is looking at a small area of your woods. And like I said, those deer could just be avoiding it. If they shifted their patterns, they probably just made a micro adjustment just to avoid that, where they're like, man, I don't know about that. I'm not sure about it. I'm just going to walk, over here instead of right there. So I wouldn't get too discouraged about it. And if you're in Michigan, you should be getting snow, and that'll be a really good opportunity for you to go out there and follow those tracks and see what they're doing and see if they are literally just peeling around your cameras and avoiding your cameras.
Yeah, I was going to say, I saw a clip from the Hunter podcast, and they were talking about that with cell cameras, where their cameras are in pretty good spots, but they get mature bucks pretty infrequently. But if you go hunt there, almost every time you'd hunt there, you'd see a mature buck, but they just wouldn't be working anywhere around those cameras, like kind of like they were avoiding cameras. And they were talking about potentially they're scaring deer. And, we hear that from so many people, especially with cameras that have they're infrared flashes, but they glow red. Deer can see that, and we've seen that even putting cameras up in that same spot you're talking about, the big 8-point that came by after he noticed the camera. He was chasing a doe by a couple weeks later. That camera was like up in that, or one of the cameras we put in there was really high up in the tree, looking at that scrape. And we had bucks notice that thing.
Yep.
Because they're working the licking branch. That's the one issue. And we've had this come up with past podcast guests where some guys don't like putting cameras on scrapes because a buck's spending, typically if he comes to a scrape, he's spending some time there. And he's got his head up and down. He's working that licking branch, and he's kind of potentially looking a couple different directions as he's working that licking branch. And that camera is on specifically video mode, and it's glowing red for that 10, 20, 30 seconds that it's taking a video. It's a lot higher chance he's going to notice that, potentially get wigged out. But we had one, I remember one buck, he was working licking branch, all of a sudden he snapped that head over, and that camera's like 9 foot up this tree, and he's looking at it. And like,
he's like,
did not like it. So that's like the caveat when you're running cameras on scrapes. Videos are great because you can kind of see where they're coming from, where they're going to, leaving on the scrape. But like, you just got to realize deer are going to see that camera unless you get a camera that truly does not glow red on video mode.
Yeah,
and there's plenty of them out there. You just got to do some research and look at them.
Yeah, that's a good point about the scrapes too, because like you said, we've interviewed a lot of people who've noticed that. And so for a while, I was putting my cameras up in the trees like you're mentioning, and I kind of quit doing that because, one, most of the areas I hunt, like I never get people on camera. Like it's pretty rare. And I mean, I get people on camera every once in a while, but they'll notice the camera and give it a thumbs up. Like I've actually never had one stolen on public land ever. I've had one stolen on private land, knock on wood. But for scrapes specifically, or even just in general, I actually like putting them at ground level because you get a much better field of view. It's not just looking down at one spot on the ground. But if I'm putting it on a scrape, I'm trying to put it like, how do I put this? Like 45 degrees off of the deer's rear end. Like if he's got his head in that scrape, I want it like off his back left shoulder, back right shoulder.
So you kind of want it facing directly at whichever direction the licking branch is coming out. You want it opposite of the licking branch.
Yeah, exactly. Because when he approaches that scrape and he's working it, I'd rather get that angle from behind him because he's not going to notice it as much, and that has worked for me. They definitely don't notice it as much.
So for reference for people, if you got a tree with that licking branch coming out, instead of putting the camera angle looking kind of in the direction the licking branch is pointed or perpendicular, 90 degrees to it, you're putting it almost the opposite direction. So where the licking branch is coming out, you're putting on the opposite direction from that licking branch, looking at it. Because typically when a buck's walking in there, he's going to be facing that licking branch more so than facing outward.
Yeah, so like if the licking branch is 12 o'clock, I'm putting it at like 5 o'clock. Mm-hmm. So that way, again, I'm getting that angle kind of behind him, and they just notice it a lot less.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point.
Because, like I said, I don't think that it makes them leave the area or stop using the area, but I do think it might make some bucks avoid that camera, for instance. And I want to keep tabs on those scrapes because I'm going to use that information for next year of when they're hitting those scrapes in daylight. So that's why I'm trying to position it so it's not spooking them or anything. Mm-hmm. But I don't think you're like ruining a property with them.
Also, another thing about putting cameras low or lower, like, I mean, what would you say? You put yours a couple feet off the ground, maybe?
Yeah, like knee high.
Okay, so 8-10 inches.
That's another thing I noticed when I find a bunch of trail cams in the woods, and they'll be like belly button to chest high. That is way too high.
Yeah,
way too high.
I mean, if you're elk hunting, maybe, but like.
A deer ain't that tall.
No.
If you ever walked up to a live deer.
Like little guy, especially down here, they little.
Yeah, dude.
They're real little.
Little pygmy deer.
But that's what I was going to say is when you have it lower like that, you're really maximizing the trigger range of those cameras, especially if you're not like in this super tight little thicket. It maximizes that trigger range where the trigger range on those cameras, say it's 60 feet or 90 feet. You're able to maximize that having lower where that camera can see further.
Yep.
So if a deer skirts that camera at 20 yards, you're going to get on camera versus when you have it up in the tree and the trigger, like that horizontal line that it's picking up movement is right at that scrape. They can be 5-10 yards on the other side of the scrape and never trigger that camera versus when you have it lower, you're getting all that information.
Yep. 100%, babe. All right. We're caught up on questions, so y'all write in some more questions. Finally got caught up after a couple weeks where we didn't do it. So appreciate everybody who wrote in questions. Last thing before we wrap this thing up and go enjoy our Thanksgivings is we're getting ready to hunt like I said, gun season's in here in Alabama. Rut's coming in. Got a cold front coming. Jacob's going to hunt his club. He hunted your club the other day. So you have not hunted it really at all this year.
No.
So far.
I mean, except the one time this past week.
Yeah. Saw a couple does. Hunted a road bed.
2 little bucks. Some raccoons.
Yeah, man.
Pretty good.
What are you planning on doing just over this next week and a half, 2 weeks on the club? You're kind of right now, just to kind of add a little context for everyone, you're pretty much in pre-rut right now. Bucks are starting to hit scrapes. There's a couple does starting to come in. Things are getting weird out there. So what's your game plan?
Game plan is trying to find more so where the bucks are cruising at. I have a pretty good idea, at least on a couple parts of the club, how the habitat lays out where does are probably spending quite a bit of time. But it's where can I set up to get the maximum bucks crossing. Like when I say like talking like road beds and like certain terrain funnels where deer are going to be coming through, but trying to cut tracks specifically. Not running any cameras out in the club. So it's more so like trying to confirm sign and tracks with some of these big crossings and areas that they're crossing at. Because all the guys on the club, like opening day, there was like 13, 14 guys hunting, counting me, and every single one of them went to a shooting house. I mean, or I'll say probably 2 of them did not counting me, and those guys sat clear cuts. Got up in I think they got up in a climber, but majority of the guys are sitting in food plots. They're sitting shooting houses, which I'm like, awesome. So there's a lot of ground that doesn't have that, like that infrastructure, shooting houses and food plots, which opens up a lot of opportunity to be able to get where guys aren't going. They're not pressuring deer and catching bucks, covering some ground. So that's really what I'm looking at over the next week, and really later this week. I've only got a couple days this week. I can go out there and spend some time. So that's kind of the game plan there. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm super excited though about it. Nobody's killed a buck yet. They've killed a few does, and I'm like, it's just about to get good.
Yeah, no doubt. And we just got this good, long, steady rain over the last day or so. Got a blank slate, baby.
I needed that for tracks. It's been dry enough that it's hard to find at least fresh tracks. You can find some tracks. But now with this rain coming through, that's what I'm planning on doing tomorrow's hunt tomorrow morning for 3-4 hours, and then get down and just start walking road beds specifically and finding where not only where there's buck tracks and big tracks, but where there are a lot of doe tracks coming through. Because that's the big thing that, again, we talk about the rut, or talk about when it comes to rut hunting, but it's like you got to know where your does are at and your concentration of does to figure out like where is the highest likelihood that a mature buck's going to come through. Looking at that big doe group and looking at this big doe group, and where can I kind of set up accordingly to catch those does coming through or going back to bed, and where these bucks are going to come through as well. So that's what I'm really going to try to pay attention to.
Yeah, definitely. That's going to be awesome.
What about you?
I'm going to be hunting a different area, and same thing though. It's going to be kind of pre-rut there. Bucks are starting to work scrapes and everything, and in that area, I'm just going to be focusing on those scrapes. Really, I'm going to be focusing on scrapes, and specifically the scrapes that are close to that bedding.
Yeah,
like we talked about earlier. I'm just going to get up there. I haven't been there yet this year, and I've got a couple cameras out, and the activity on those cameras so far this year has been less than last year. The same bucks are in there, but it's just been less, and I think it's because last year we had such a spotty mast year, and there just wasn't a lot of acorns on the ground. And the areas where those cameras were some of the only areas that had acorns on the ground. This year is the exact opposite. Bumper crop year. I think they're a little bit more scattered, but I still think they're going to be holding tight in those bedding areas. So I'm going to go and check those bedding areas, do some calling, do a little bit of rattling, see what I can get into. It's going to be fun, dude.
Yeah.
I'm pumped.
Also, I was going to mention with this episode coming out, Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody out there. We are also running our Black Friday kind of Cyber Monday sale going on right now at the southernoutdoorsman.com. So all apparel's on sale, 25% off. So 25% off on everything: hats, shirts, hoodies, decals, everything. So go check it out. Again, if you haven't picked up Southern Outdoorsman hat, shirt, hoodie, or decal quite yet, go pick you up one. We're shipping those out as fast as possible. I appreciate everybody that's already been buying apparel. It's been really cool kind of seeing everybody sending photos and videos of you wearing the hoodies, the shirts, especially the Freezer Queen shirts. It's been pretty cool to kind of see. y'all actually saw that Monday, because when we had Derek Dixon on, talking kind of late season hunting from Whitetail Research, he had one of our Freezer Queen shirts on.
Yep.
Rocking it, baby. But no, appreciate all that support. But yeah, right now, go over to the southernoutdoorsman.com, link down below. Go pick up some apparel, and appreciate all y'all support, wearing everything and supporting us. It's been pretty cool. Appreciate everybody, also all the support for over the year and over the really last 8 years, watching or really listening to the podcast in the last few years, watching the podcast, sharing the podcast with friends and family, and also being engaging, writing in listener Q&As, submitting listener success stories. We've had a bunch of them come in so far where, some of you guys have gone out, implemented something you learned on the podcast, went and had success killing your first buck, your best buck, killed a buck, or killed a doe, implementing something you've learned on the podcast. And it's really cool to see those. So again, you can submit your listener success stories on the website. There's a form on there, a tab on there. You can kind of get all that submitted, and we share those in the off season. So we've got a bunch of them to go through, and some of y'all have been killing some really, really big deer. I'm a little jealous, but hey, it's been awesome kind of seeing those roll in. Got anything else?
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Yep.
Y'all shoot straight.
Go shoot straight. And if you're in Alabama, Mississippi, it's about to get really, really good, guys. So best luck to y'all hunting the rest of the season. We'll catch you back on the next episode from the Southern Outdoorsman podcast. And remember, guys, y'all stay Southern.